Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House. Alongside, as always, Mr. Martin Popoff. What's up, Martin?
Yeah. Nothing much. Looking forward to this. It's kind of a cool topic. Yeah, it's a fond memories topic. So but yeah, some good stories and dealing weather-wise, we're dealing with more smoke. Toronto was one of the worst in the world yesterday. Montreal was bad, Ottawa was bad. So I hear Detroit's bad, Cleveland's bad, right?
Chicago.
Columbus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
George Lamy was saying how bad
Chicago.
it was in Chicago yesterday. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so far, nothing here in New York, at least where I live. I don't know about the city, but the humidity's here, though. I think all
Yeah.
the torrential rains are done for a little bit, and we're going to expect hot and sticky and humid weather for the next couple days. So, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
July, right?
Yeah.
So, or soon to be July, right? Tomorrow's
Yeah.
July. Yeah. So we've got like Martin said, we've got a fun topic today. So this is kind of like a don't need to do a lot of homework other than kind of scour the memory banks. And we got to talking about, Martin and I have interviewed a lot of people, Martin even way more than myself, over the years. And we thought, how about like we just do a storytelling episode where we talk about some of those really fun interviews that we did, or maybe they weren't fun, right? Maybe but they were memorable. So we've each picked out 10, and these could be phone interviews, in person, on video, on YouTube, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but ones that really stick out for us that are very, very memorable. So we got 10 each. Martin, you want to do one back and forth, back and forth? You want to do two or three in a row? I don't know how we want to do this here.
Okay, let's go three at a time then.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I've got them in reverse order as usual to build the drama up to that number one. So yeah, so all of mine except one are going to be in persons because that's something that does put you a little bit over the top to say, hey, this was a little more memorable. You're sitting down in person, depending on what the venue is and stuff. But my first one, the theme is when I would get interviews that are not in my wheelhouse. So I feel like my power and my stature is lesser because it's not a heavy metal band, right? So I've got some outlet for it, but it's don't write for a lot for them, and now I gotta deal with PR people I normally don't deal with. So I like when you have that victory of your interviewing one of your legendary, someone you think is legendary, and it's not in your wheelhouse, and you're going, I can't even believe I got this right. So my first one is the New York Dolls. David Sylvain and I'm sorry, David Johansen and Sil Sylvain both. At a venue at the Phoenix here in Toronto. I got a nice sit down interview with them. They were nice guys. They signed my stuff, and I thought, I can't believe I'm here. And I looked around, and it's like I'm the only one interviewing these guys, and it really kind of taught me the lesson of 80% of life is showing up, right? So just showing some interest. I'm thinking, here I am in Toronto, a city of 5 million people. Why am I the only one interviewing the New York Dolls? I thought that was really odd. So that's my number 10. A couple of life lessons there. My number 8, I'm going to go with Ian Gillan in a hotel room as well. Well, the first one was at a venue, upstairs the back of the Phoenix, but I like these hotel ones as well because it's intimate. You're not being interrupted. You got good audio. It's cool that you're there. You get a couple things signed, but Ian Gillan is always a great interview, period. But yeah, it was nice to sit down with him in a calm setting. I've been with him on the bus, a lot of times on the phone. I've been with him, back of the venue, and there's always stuff buzzing around, but hotel rooms are nice that way. Keeping that theme, and again, most of these are going to be famous people because those are the ones you remember the most. You go, I can't believe I'm here with this famous person. It makes me feel like a big shot, right? So my next one is Ozzy Osbourne in a hotel room, which is always great. And I remember, Tim and I kidding ourselves all the time. There was this period, I've mentioned this on the show before, but there was a period where we thought, geez, I guess it's kind of regular. We're going to get to talk to Ozzy every once in a while. That's pretty cool, right? And then it got really hard to talk to Ozzy Osbourne after a while. And I remember this being one of those where we're going, I'm sitting there, sitting right in front of him, one-on-one, nice long interview, sitting in a hotel room, great, getting an interview with Ozzy and almost feeling like, this is kind of like normal, I've had a phoner with Ozzy last year, another one's coming up, and then all of a sudden we went years. It was really hard to talk to Ozzy, so that was cool as a fond memory of a last one. So that's my first three.
Yeah, I mean the in-person ones are definitely memorable for lots of reasons, and sometimes things happen in these in-person interviews. So I went, my first three are all going to be, well, let's see. I'm trying to figure out, yeah, so they were all in person. Two of them were at listening parties that I was invited to, and the other one was a performance that I got invited to go interview the band backstage, and that turned into a crazy evening. I'll get to that. That'll be my third one today. So my first one was in going back to 2005. So I was asked to go to the Meshuggah Catch 33 listening party in New York City. And God, I don't remember what place it was at. It was at some bar somewhere. And I remember it was my first time meeting the band. And I remember thinking how cool they were. And, I'm there with all these other people from various websites and magazines and things like that. And you know how these things go, Martin. They put you in a room, you go and you listen to the album, and you're kind of, you're like, ooh, ah, whatever. And they're all like, oh, it's great, wasn't it? And, hopefully you think that it's great. And then the band comes out and you get to kind of chit chat and drink and talk up with the band. So that was a lot of fun. And I think that was my second one that I ever did of something like that. The first one, though, was my next choice, which was a Soilwork listening party, again, at some bar in downtown New York City. I don't remember which place it was in. This was on the eve of their release of Stabbing the Drama, which came out in 2005. And specifically, I was there to interview Peter Wykers, who's no longer, I don't believe he's in the band any longer, but he was like one of the founding members. And I thought that he was such a really, really cool guy, really good sense of humor. And I remember when I heard he left the band a couple of years later, I was kind of like, that was the guy, right? And that was a lot of fun. And again, one of those things where you go, you listen to the album, but it's such a social event that you wind up drinking way too much and you eat a little bit. And so the interview becomes like kind of like an afterthought. You just kind of chit-chatting with them and whatever, and you talk a little bit about the album, but you listen to it once amidst all these people, you're drinking up a storm. So it's like, I always found those listening party interviews kind of weird because, again, you're being asked to ask questions about an album you just heard. You don't really have time to prepare anything thoughtful or anything like that, but he was such a cool dude. And again, I'm going to stick to the same year, 2005. I was really busy in 2005 doing all sorts of stuff for the webzine that year. I got asked to go interview Fintroll backstage at the Fintroll Sodom concert at BB King's in New York City. It was January 2005. It was my birthday. Let's just say that doing an interview and hanging out with a Finnish band after their set in New York City with like cases and cases of Corona beer, probably not a good idea. I got so hammered during this time that I spent with them. I don't even know what I asked them. All I remember is that by the time I got done talking to them, and because like an idiot, I probably drank before I went to the venue, guaranteed. After I got done with the interview and they were ready to go pack up and do whatever, I went out into the audience to go watch Sodom. Martin, I was so drunk that my head was spinning. And I literally left like halfway through Sodom's set and somehow stumbled back to the train station to get onto the train to go home because at least I had the wherewithal to say, you are way too wasted. You need to get home somehow. How I got home, I have no idea. But I will never hang out with a bunch of Finnish metalheads. That was just kind of like a mistake. Not that I won't hang out, but try and drink with these guys was ridiculous. I even have a picture somewhere of me sitting backstage with them with the microphone talking to them, and there are empty beer bottles everywhere. And these guys are just, they're younger than me, obviously, and they're just downing beers left and right. So that was like memorable in a kind of humorous and maybe not so good way. But those are my first three.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, my drinking one. I mean, it's not one of these, so I'll be brief. But I didn't put it on my list. But I remember telling you about this one before. Is I remember on a nice summer day, getting on the subway, going across town to this nice, serious folk venue, and sitting down with Dave Pegg from Fairport Convention at like 4 p.m, right? And I'm a little nervous, right? So because I'm asking him Jethro Tull questions and Nick Drake questions and stuff like this, right? And Joe, what's his name, the producer questions, and I don't really know my Fairport Convention all that well, but just the super nicest guy. The rest of the band were nice as well, but we sit down in this venue, and there's like red wine, right? And so like we're pouring each other red wine, and I'm a fast drinker anyways, but I'm drinking this wine fast because I'm also nervous, right? And I just remember like few minutes into the interview, I'm like, I've had like 2 or 3 glasses of this, goblets pretty much of this red wine, and I'm really getting looped really fast. But finally, I got through it and got out of there, and I was fine. But my seventh choice here is related to that, because it's the same damn thing, but I don't remember really getting too loaded. But Zach Wilde on the bus, right? I've had these. I've had these in front of the Opera House, a little bit north of the city. I remember Hamilton, outside of a venue when he was with Ozzy, outside of the big hockey barn, and sitting there in Zach's drinking years at 2 or 4 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon, and you're both pounding beers, and the band's milling about, and maybe you're there with someone else, and the stories are hilarious, and the Bill Ward impressions and the Ozzy impressions, and just he's such a jokester, right? So those are always fun. I don't know which one is which, but definitely that's my number 7. My number 6, Bruce Dickinson backstage at Molson Amphitheater. That was so cool, because this is Bruce, they're big band. I think this was Dance of Death tour. The album had just come out, got lots of time with them, just sitting down in their nice dressing room behind, this is going to be a big sold out summer shed show, feeling important, getting back there, talking to Bruce. I mean, I've talked to him a few times before, but this is just me and him, and it's in the sit down thing. And my story, I just remember him kind of being a little kind of looking around the interview, thinking, I got to get something to eat at some point, right? And all this, and it's like, and he goes over and he makes a sandwich, but all there is like bread and condiments, right? So he eats a ketchup sandwich, right? And okay, fine, and then we both step out of the room, and sitting right by the door is this huge tray full of all the meats and stuff, meats and cheeses and everything. And he just kind of good naturedly goes, "Oh, that's where it was." And we walk down the hall. It was so weird, right? But yeah, you see the rock star that's got to survive, right? It's like, well, if I got to survive, I'm going to make a ketchup sandwich. I'm going to eat it.
You got to do what you
Even though I'm Bruce Dickinson, that's my dinner before playing live tonight, right? And he was good natured about it. We go out, and he turns to his left and goes, "Oh, that's where it was." So that's funny. So that's my number 6. Let's see, 6, 7, 5. 5 would be when Tim Henderson and I got to go and interview all of Black Sabbath in a swanky hotel in Toronto, the King Edward. We get ushered in. We sit down with Geezer and Tony. They sign all our stuff, do the interview, have a great time, all laughs. They're super nice guys. Right after, get ushered down the hall, sit down on the floor, cross-legged in front of Ozzy and Bill, sign all our stuff. They were super nice. Ozzy's hurling good-natured insults at Bill the whole time, and all this. And Bill's taking it in that weird dynamic relationship they have. And yeah, I remember getting in the elevator with Tim after, and Tim looks at me, goes, "Did that just happen?" So we thought that was really cool. So that's my
interesting how they had them split up into 2 different rooms like that.
Yeah, it was neat. Yeah, just to keep that chatter down or whatever, and give you a good interview. But yeah, to have the entire band, that was on the '99 reunion tour.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, my next 3. Let's see. I'll start off with back in 2005 again. I did a ton of shit in 2005. That's why it seems like so memorable, because I packed so much in. I actually went to the DRT Records offices in New York City to interview Derek Shulman from Gentle Giant in 2005. And I remember I was there on business for my day job at the time. I was attending a conference, and I set it up with Derek that I would go meet with him after I was done working for the day. So I literally showed up to his office. I'm still wearing my work clothes and everything like that. And I remember getting in, and I was just so in awe of meeting him, right? Because he's one of my favorite, classic 70s prog bands and whatnot. Yeah. And we sit down in this big, huge conference room, and I pull out my tape recorder, and we have this great chat, great interview. And I was just like on cloud 9. And I remember I get home, and I press play on the recorder, and somehow it recorded it all fucked up. And it was just, you could barely hear what we were saying. And it was, I don't know what happened, Martin. And I was horrified. And I'm like, no. And so I literally spent a week listening to this tape over and over and over again, to get whatever I could and plus my memory to be able to put. And this was an interview I put up on the website, right? So then I had to transcribe it all. Oh, what a nightmare. But I mean, that interview has gotten tens of thousands of views over the years. I mean, we're talking, 18 years ago, right? And I remember later on, because I've spoken to Derek numerous times after that. I went and told him the whole story about what happened. He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "That's terrible." I'm like, "Yeah, it was pretty terrible." But I remember just being mortified when that happened. I was like, "Man, don't tell me, please." Another one also that I believe it was that same year. No, this is actually the next year, 2006. I went to another listening party in New York City for Voivod. They're releasing the 14 album, which can also featured Jason Newsted on bass. This was one of the couple albums that he appeared on. So they were doing a listening party in the city and interviews with Jason and Away to talk about the album. And I remember being, and I don't know what I was thinking. I have no idea. It was cold. I was in the middle of the winter. So I showed up in this like very preppy red sweater, because I just figured it was going to be cold, right? Whatever. I don't know what I was thinking. And I remember showing up and meeting Jason. I was kind of in awe because, of course, he was at Metallica, right? Thinking, oh, whatever. And a really sweet guy. But I remember one point during the interview, he looks over me. He's like, "Nice sweater. You really match with everybody else here in the room." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I don't know what I was thinking." But that was very funny. And Away was great. He was,
Oh, lost your audio. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Hit pause. Hit pause for.
Yeah, I guess we got our audio thing straightened out. So so that was cool meeting Jason Newsted and Away from Voivod. And the other one, also from 2005, this was probably one of the most epic phone interviews I've ever done. I had an interview with Frank Marino. Yes, the one and only Frank Marino. Nicest guy. Man, we were on the phone for like 2.5 hours. And Martin, 2005, you know what we're doing with phone interviews, right? We're transcribing those bastards, right? So I remember like transcribing that one, taking forever. But man, he was just so gracious and so nice and such a pleasure to talk to. I think probably out of all the folks that I've ever interviewed, I mean, Frank is one of the nicest guys ever. You ever get a chance to talk to him?
Yes, and my fond memory is one phoner, I believe, but also at a venue. Sound check time, sitting down with him. He's super nice.
Yeah, really, really nice guy. Very gracious and very, for someone who is just beloved by so many people, very, very humble. So very cool. All right, back to you.
Yeah, just to follow up. So we me and a bunch of journalists got driven in a van to Montreal to do that. I thought it was the Voivod album, but the entire band was there. That was great. We got given Voivod shirts. So that was a fun memory for me. And my fun Meshuggah memory is after talking to those guys a few times over the years as a tiny band, it was really cool sitting down with them backstage at the Air Canada Center when they were sporting Tool and like just like us sort of congratulating them and them being happy. Like, I can't believe we got this far. Remember, we talk at the Opera House all the time, right?
Yeah,
so
Meshuggah were great that way because I had met with them and interviewed them after that first time, and they always remembered me. I went on their tour bus once to talk to Martin, the guitar player, and always cool guys. And they're very, very, very great, cool band. Bunch of really nice dudes.
And my last story is to follow up on the recording didn't work story. So I had that happen twice that I remember. And it was Geezer Butler and Brad Whitford, like two big ones, right? And the Geezer was one of these in the old days when I was doing them from the house. I would plug my headphones into the mic jack of my home stereo, big home stereo, because headphones, the diaphragm serves as a microphone, right? And then I would answer the phone downstairs and rubber band it around that and run up to my office and do the interview. So I guess the tape was loose or something and just click, stopped, right? It's down. This is all happening downstairs. Brad Whitford was here in my office. Somehow it didn't record. But in any event, both of those, I was absolutely horrified. But because I had my typed out questions and I did it immediately from memory, I was like, damn, I think I did this whole thing from memory almost perfect. Right.
Wow.
So I made sure I just typed it in, just go, like immediately right after. And
the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my number 4, 3, and 2, I'll leave the one. My number 4 is John Paul Jones in person. So this was one that I was super proud of because I showed up at Massey Hall. This was when John Paul Jones, as a solo act, was supporting King Crimson at Massey Hall. So I showed up there, and I thought, just on a whim, I got my big collector's guide book. I'll give it to the security guy and say, I'll go, I would like to speak to him for a few minutes if possible. Can you? Yeah, it's totally unplanned, right? I give it to him. He says, come back in an hour. I come back. John Paul Jones will see me. So sitting down in his dressing room, and signed a couple things for me, and had a beautiful chat. Super lovely man, right? So that was amazing that I just pulled that off. It's like, wow, just spontaneous. And I believe that was, no, maybe it's a different time, but this is when I also managed to get Adrian Blues, one of my rock god heroes, to sign a couple things for me. And since I've talked to him before, but yeah, I thought my ingenuity there, that it paid off, was amazing. My number 3 is Neil Peart in a hotel room for 2 hours. Basically, going through everything, because this was when I did that first Rush book back in 2003. It was all authorized. It was all above board. It's like, hey, this is for that. Yeah. We got to set this up. So yeah, came to Toronto, sat down in a hotel room. That was great. My number 2 is Malcolm Young in a hotel room. He was super nice. And this was after the Toronto Rocks concert the next day, 1:00 in the afternoon. And yeah, also got some things signed, and the label guy was super nice and got a couple things signed by Angus and Brian. I met Angus in the hallway in his little white hotel gown, carrying his tray of tea. Super nice. So that's my number 2. Definitely a fond memory. And yeah, the only crappy part of that whole thing was that the whole SARS stock concert, I thought, I'm going to be smart and I'm going to leave early halfway through the Stones and beat the crowd back. And then I just took some ridiculous route that didn't work. And it took me like 4 hours to get home at starting at midnight. Right. Because there were 500,000 people there. Right.
Yeah. Holy crap. Yeah.
But yeah, all the buses were screwed up and cabs were screwed up and everything. And of course I didn't drive and to this thing, and it just took me forever to get home. But
that's the worst. Yeah. Cause you want to have like fond memories of the whole day. And that just kind of like paints a dark picture of the latter half of it. Yeah. All right. I had to include him in this list because I think he, the very first time I talked to him, it wasn't just an interview. So Mike Portnoy, I have to talk about Mike Portnoy because I think he's become a friend, which is really cool. But I think the first time I was chasing Portnoy for years to appear on the YouTube channel. And finally, and I have to thank Jim Bakke for really making it all happen, because Jim knew Mike for a while. When he finally agreed to come on the channel and talk to me, he's like, I don't really want to do a sit-down interview. He goes, those are kind of boring. He goes, why don't you pick a topic and let's just talk about a topic? He goes, I'm a music nerd just like you. He goes, I watch your channel. He goes, let's give me something good and let's just talk about it. So like we did some discussion about double albums, right? I mean, just who doesn't like talking about double albums? So here I am. I got Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater and all these other bands on the channel for the very first time. And he doesn't want to just be interviewed. He just wants to talk music like you and I do, like we all do on here. And I thought that was really, really cool and really memorable. And I think just showed what a true fan of music he is, right? He doesn't see himself as this, rock god or anything like that. He's just like us. He's just a nerd like all of us. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah. My next one was probably, Martin, you mentioned before being really nervous to talk to David Pegg. And I generally don't get nervous when I do interviews. However, the first one that I was ever nervous as shit for was when I first talked to Rob Halford from Judas Priest. Mm-hmm. One of my heroes for my entire life. And I remember like getting the interview, being very, very excited about it, and starting like 24 hours before I was scheduled to talk to him. I was just like, holy shit, I'm going to be talking to Rob Halford. And I literally was like shaking with nerves while I was like the first couple of minutes of my Zoom call with him. But man, after like 5 minutes, I was kind of like, he's just like you and me, right? He's no different. And I had a very, very nice interview with him. And again, it was mainly talking about his book at the time. I would love to talk to him again about, a Judas Priest album, but very, very nice, personable guy. That was really cool. And then my number 2 was probably the wackiest interview I ever did. And I'll tell you, I'll go into a little story about the fact that it had to happen twice. So another guy I was chasing around for a while, who I've been a fan of forever, is Steve Lukather. And I finally talked to his manager, Steve Karras, and because I've been working with him forever. And I was like, dude, I said, can you convince Steve to come on the show and talk to me? He had, it was a Total live album coming out at the time. This was during the pandemic. And he finally got Steve to, convince Steve to do the interview. And we got Steve on, and then we set a time for it. And then, I don't know, and I don't want to get too much into details, but the first time we agreed to talk, it was early in the morning, and Steve was kind of acting like he had been up all night. And I was like, and he was all over the place. And then in like 10 minutes into our video conversation, he gets a phone call from a family member who he just like, I'm in an interview, whatever, I'll call you back. And then like he starts to talk again, and he's like, oh, I think that call was about something. I need to go. And he just abruptly said goodbye. And that was it. So I'm like, okay, I got 10 minutes of Steve Lukather all over the place. And he obviously got a distressing call from a family member. So I went back to Steve Karras, and I was like, can we reschedule this? And he goes, yeah. So we rescheduled it for like, I think the following week. And he came on, he was totally normal, and was a great interview. And he had, he's got so many stories to talk about, and he's such a character and such a personality that I had like a bunch of questions for him. I would ask him one question, he would go off for 10 minutes. And then once I saw him start to slow down, I would throw another question in there. And just really cool, quirky dude, great sense of humor, so many stories to tell. And he is the character that he portrays himself to be. It was totally amazing interview, one that I'll never forget.
Yeah, that absolutely was amazing. That was very cool. And your Dennis DeYoung, of course, is epic, right? Yeah, that was good as well. So okay, so number one. So my number one, I might have told this story before, maybe not. But my number one is the only one on this list that's a phoner. So basically, when I was doing my Queen book, I'm putting out all these feelers to interview people, and Paul McCartney, I put out feelers to talk to Paul McCartney, right? And all of a sudden, a couple of weeks go by, and says, yeah, Paul, talk to you, 4 o'clock this afternoon. It was like 4 o'clock Eastern, on a Friday, right? And it's like, oh my God. So yeah, you talk about getting nervous, right? So I got super, super nervous for this one. But yeah, eventually all of a sudden, like right on time, the phone rings, it's Paul McCartney, and we're chatting away. And as it turns out, this was a rare time that he usually goes with a driver, but he's driving himself. So he's calling me from the car, and he's driving. And he's on his way back from the studio to home. And the cool thing is the entire topic is about Queen, because it's for my Queen book, right? So I'm asking him, I'm lobbing him all these softballs about Queen, because really, are you going to ask him like super nerdy stuff? No, I mean, I just want anything from him, right? Anything
right,
useful, right? And so, he's telling me all this stuff. And it's like, I'm thinking the whole time, am I actually talking to the most famous rock star of all time, living or dead, and literally one of the most famous people of our entire lifetimes, right?
Yeah, for
like
sure.
Absolutely top of the food chain for interviews. I think of like the ranking of the famous people I've talked to, right? And there's Paul McCartney, unquestionably in the number one slot, and then anybody else famous I've talked to goes down to the 20s somewhere, right? Kind of thing, right? But yeah, and he's telling me, when my wife had her birthday party, we were in Japan, so we hired a Queen tribute band called Gween, and that was really fun. And he's telling me, we're talking about the record labels and all this stuff, and so I don't want to keep him too long and stuff. And then at one point, I tried to wrap it up myself, because I don't want to tick him off, right? And he goes, oh no, Martin, you got me. I'm captive. I'm in my car. I'm just driving. Yeah. What else you got? So okay, cool. Ask him a few more questions, and then I slowly ask him some things that I might be able to use one day about the origins of heavy metal and Helter Skelter. He's giving me good answers on that, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, we're just working on right now, like getting the White Album all fixed up." And so he starts like making conversation and stuff. So this is cool, and I'm past the 20-minute mark, and I'm thinking I really got to wrap this up. So I'm wrapping it up, and he goes and partly all through he's going, "Oh, just hang on a sec, Martin. I'm just pulling into my drive." And it's like at one point he goes, "Hang on. Oh, there's a lady in front of me. God, back up, love, back up." Because now he's on like either his private road or it's a one-way road, or there's someone right in front of him. So he's got to stall and he's got to wait for this car to get out of the way and stuff. And so I just finally wrapped it up and hung up. And I think we went for 26 minutes.
Wow.
And I really thought I'm going to keep him for 12 minutes or something, right? I just want something, right? And this was right at the end of having the Queen book ready to go. And it's like I emailed, I didn't even tell the publisher about it until it was done, right? Because you want to actually be in the books. And it's like they literally stopped the book, at whatever process they were. And yeah, absolutely. Paul McCartney goes in, Sir Paul McCartney. And that's what they put right on the book. Sir Paul McCartney in there. So that was really cool. So yeah, 80% of it was about Queen and a little bit about the Beatles and stuff. But
you got to think, so Paul McCartney is the top of the food chain when it comes to scoring an interview with someone. I mean, who would you put right underneath there? Robert Plant?
You mean most famous person, or who we
want? Like who?
Because I had both of those conversations with people, and maybe even with you. But there's most famous people, and there's the guys we want the most, right? So who would be the five you want the most that you've never had?
I would think if I would aspire to, I want to talk to the most famous, important, living rock stars that are still out there. McCartney's the top of the food chain. Mick Jagger, Robert Plant, Keith Richards, Elton John. Who am I missing? Rod Stewart. I mean, who else is there who's still around that like these are the people that you aspire to talk to?
Yeah, mine is close to that. Mine would be Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, Roger Waters.
Yeah.
Did I say Brian May? Brian May. Those are all my top ones. Yeah.
Steven Tyler, I think would be cool. Would be up there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones I always think about. And the closest I got is I did get to ask Robert Plant a question as part of a really good. He's such a great interview, but it was a press conference with a bunch of people. So technically, I've got all that and can use it all for whatever, although it's mostly about the latest album, right? Kind of thing. But yeah, so I technically got to ask him a question. I got to ask Ringo Starr a question, but again, from the crowd in a press situation.
Yeah.
But those other guys, no. I was sitting and watching a Jimmy Page interview, but I had no interaction with it. Yeah, those are the ones. Yeah, and I keep asking for Brian May. I've been asking for Brian May for years from his management, and he answers me back right away with a no. But it's like I almost even get a little thrill that I even get an answer back, because half the time you don't get an answer back, right?
Yeah. And I've been trying with Tony Iommi for the longest time. I still haven't talked to the Sabbath guys. It's like, I had Bevan on the show a couple of years ago, and he's buddies with Tony, and he promised me, he goes, I will make it happen for you. I will make it happen for you. But I'm still waiting. So yeah. Anyway, my number one, Martin mentioned it before, my 2-hour extravaganza two-parter with Dennis DeYoung.
Sorry, I let the cat out of the bag.
That's all right. That was the most entertaining interview I have ever done. As fun as the Steve Lukather one was, that was like a half hour. But I had like 2 hours with Dennis DeYoung. It was only supposed to be a half hour. I mean, and it just blew my mind because he's so engaging and such a sense of humor. And I never expected in a million years that he would come on and start talking to me and all of a sudden start throwing back little things that I've said on the channel over the years. Like he watches every day. And I was like, wow, how did you know that? He goes, I've been watching. I'm like, all right, very cool. But he just like we were only supposed to talk for a half hour. At like 40 minutes, we're still talking. And I'm like looking at my clock and I'm like, man, he's probably got other interviews that are getting backed up. And then like at almost an hour, he goes to me, he goes, what are you doing in a half hour? And I'm like, why? He goes, well, because I'm really late to talk to someone else. But he goes, how about if I like go and do that real quick and we'll come and we'll finish this because we're just getting going. And I'm like, okay. And then like a half hour later, he sends me an email. He goes, you ready to hop back on? I'm like, okay. And then he gave me another hour plus. I was like, holy moly. And it was so entertaining. I have watched that one numerous times. And it's like, he just, he's got some of the great stories. He not pissed off at his former bandmates, and just a guy that just you can just talk to like I knew him all these years, but he was making fun of me, and he was, you know, all sorts of things, and he was throwing stuff back in my face that I've said on the channel about, you know, Styx songs and albums and all this kind of stuff. It was just really, really eye-opening that, because, you know, sometimes, Martin, you talk to some of your heroes and you get them either in person or on a call or on a Zoom or something, and you're disappointed because they're just like, they don't have much to say. They're very matter of fact the way they answer your questions. You're like, that's it. And then you get some of them who give you way more than you'd ever ask for. So
yeah, I love that guy to death, and he's a great interview. But it's anytime I've interviewed him, it's been on the phone. So it's like you're listening to that accent, and he's so fast and he's quick with the little jokes. So you got to pay attention and make sure you catch when he says something to you and expects an answer, right? It might even be, you got to kind of know your Sticks really good to know what the answer is, or he cracks a joke, you know, and you've got to laugh at it, you know. So that's a little you know, unnerving when it's on the phone. I can understand how it, you know, would have been much better with better audio, and he's sitting in front of you, you can see him. It's easier to do. But and he's all over the place, hard to transcribe because of the well, now you know, now you can use robot transcription for a lot of this stuff, and it makes it a little quicker. But if the accent's heavy and the phone line ain't great, and the way he talks with a lot of asides, it can be a bit painful.
He's got that heavy duty Chicago accent. He's talking really quick. He's throwing little zingers here and there. And like, you know, like at one point we're talking and he goes, now, Pete, I know you don't care about lyrics, but I know your wife is a big fan of Babe and all the soft songs we did. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? I'm like, I'm like, wait, God, how much have you been watching here? He knows more about me than I do. Right. I'm like, holy cow. But it was totally cool. Totally cool.
Funny. Yeah. Cool.
So there you have it, everybody. Just some fun storytelling about interviews we've done and some of the more memorable ones. There's plenty of other ones. I mean, I had a whole list of other ones that I was kind of thinking about, but you know, you can, for mine, I don't know. I guess, Martin, where's the best place that we could tell people to go check out some of these? So if you're here on the channel, you can find all of my interviews that I've done for SOT YouTube channel. There's a playlist called Interviews. If you go over to the webzine, we have a tab that's called Interviews. You click on that, and there you'll get all the transcribed, you know, written interviews that either I did on the phone or emails or all that kind of, or in person, all that kind of stuff. So that's there. Martin, how about you? I mean, you've got
I'll just give you a couple honorable mentions here, because I'm looking at my notes, and I just made some kind of insights, you know. Tour bus interviews. So I've had a few of those, and then I'm thinking, they're mostly with smaller bands, but I can picture myself sitting at the front of the bus, the back of the bus, you know, weird things that happen, you know, just, you know, people smoking and whatever, drinking or whatever, what music was playing. So they're interesting. My other fond memories are other hotel room interviews, because those are always the most relaxing. So Sammy Hagar, Kirk Hammett, the Darkness guys, Ian Astbury was really fun, Bret Michaels. Tour bus, I remember Paul Chapman was a fond memory because we lost him shortly thereafter. Gary Newman, that falls into that category of guys in a genre I don't really have any power in, right? And it's like, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to Gary Newman on his bus. So that was really cool. I think of Michael Schenker, all those phoners, and then finally I'm sitting on the bus with him, or in an interview. Tim and I, James Hetfield backstage at Air Canada Center, that was amazing. Meeting Nazareth for the first time for in-persons, Priest for in-persons. Soundgarden was one of those where I felt, you know, although sometimes interviews are a little stressful, because you can just feel the stress in the room with PR agents and people, and, oh, can I get you this, get you that? And everything's quiet and usher you in here. And, you see the newspaper people there and all this, right? And it's all like, I'm just some little guy from some metal magazine, and there's all these TV crews and stuff. So that's always stressful. And Soundgarden kind of felt a bit like that. Tim and I sitting down on the bus with all of Loudness. That was amazing.
Oh, cool.
Venues that you didn't think. First of all, I remember Tim and I always thinking we're never going to see any of these black metal bands and Swedish bands and stuff. And then they all start coming, all the power metal bands playing these little venues, and we're looking at each other going, we didn't think we'd meet any of these European bands. Now we're meeting every one of them, right? So that's cool. And then we had another couple of venues started getting in. It was weird. Remember when all of a sudden Michael Schenker's showing up, and Uli John Roth and Molly Hatchet and Blackfoot and all these guys? It's like, why are all these guys coming here? How am I getting to see Graham Bonnet? There's all these guys you thought you'd never see. And then all of a sudden you're standing in front of them and interviewing them, like the Molly Hatchet guys and stuff. Yeah. So those are always fun as well. Yeah. The odd road trip. I remember the first time I ever met in person UFO was in Akron, Ohio, I believe. And yeah, Phil was already well into the drinks by the time after stage and stuff. So yeah, there's some of my honorable mentions. As to where my interviews are, they're just all over the place,
all
right?
over the place.
Yeah.
So you bring to mind some stuff so just some honorables for me. So I remember interviewing Peter Tägtgren from Hypocrisy, and great producer and whatnot, interviewing him backstage in New York City. Star Symmetry and Hammerfall, I interviewed all those guys. I would literally, every time I went to a concert in New York City, I would shoot the band, review the show, and interview them backstage all the time. Uriah Heep did the same thing there. In fact, I had Uriah Heep on the channel here a couple of years ago, Mick and Davey. That was a lot of fun. One I probably should have brought up that was really memorable. So this probably goes back to 2004 or something like that. I was sitting there, I was living in a different town, and I was sitting there at the gym one day, and I'm working out, and I see this guy working out near where I was, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, that fucking looks like Reed St. Mark from Celtic Frost. And I'm like, so I walk up to him and I'm like, are you Reed? He goes, yes.
Wow.
And like he didn't want anybody to know, right? So I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, what are you doing here? So he was telling me how he grew up in the town. It was Monroe, New York. I grew up in the town, moved away for many years, was in the band, whatever, and just recently came back and was living in the town again and joined the gym and whatnot. So I became very friendly with him. Of course, the great drummer from Celtic Frost, right? Their classic lineup. So we started, we just started up a really great friendship. And then I actually wound up getting an interview with Tom Warrior, and they hadn't talked in many years. So I said to her, because I think they had the reunion album coming out and doing the big tour. And, but of course, Reed wasn't a part of it. So I said to Reed, I said, how about this? I said, how about I'm doing a phone interview with Tom. I was like, how about you come to my house when I'm doing the phone interview, and I'll be interviewing Tom, and halfway through the interview, I will shut up and you throw something out that only he would know that you know. So that's what we did. So we did the interview. I stopped talking, and then Reed blurted something out, and Tom's like, wait a second. Thinking it was me. How do you know that? And then he goes, hello, Tom. No way. He was totally blindsided. And then when we went to see the show in New York City, I went with Reed, and Reed introduced me to Tom, and Tom's like, you're the guy who did that to me right that day on the phone. He goes, it's all your fault, right? I'm like, yes, that was me. Very wicked. Yeah, that was a cool moment.
Very cool. Nice.
But yeah, there's other good ones, man. Simon Phillips was an amazing interview. Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash, Steve Morse from Deep Purple, the whole John Petrucci from Dream Theater interview that I did, where on camera I asked him, I was like, so is there ever going to be another Liquid Tension experiment album or tour, you guys? Because him and Portnoy hadn't worked together in a long time. And he goes, like I threw him off, and he goes, we can talk about that off camera. I'm like, okay, no problem. And then we go off camera. He goes, did you know that we're secretly doing a reunion album? I'm like, no, I just threw it out there. He goes, okay, we can't mention that though, because they were going to, like, I think it was 2 months later, they were going to let it know. So of course, everybody watches this interview and like, Pete, what did he say to you off camera? What do you say? Is there going to be another Liquid Tension experiment album? I'm like, I don't know anything. I can't say anything. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was kind of cool.
Cool. Nice.
So anyway, we Martin and I can go on forever talking about these stories because they're always so much fun. But anyway, I hope you guys had fun with this. Martin, any quick updates from you, contrarians, podcast, books, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Contrarians just had a Led Zeppelin 3 Dark Horse go up. We're going to have a Skid Row Subhuman Race with Sean Kelly go up shortly. We just did the live show on album covers with no text.
Yeah, that was fun. That was
fun. And so martinpopoff.com for the books. And the latest podcast, audio podcast history and 5 songs episode was Glad They Went Poppy. So examples of where I surprised myself, where I liked the crappy commercial direction of the band better than what they were doing before. So
why not? Cool. Coming up here on the channel, we've got UK Connection coming at you tomorrow. Another ranking the songs on a classic album. Surprisingly enough, that album is Huey Lewis and the News Sports. We'll try to do something a little bit different, right? People are going to be surprised by that. That was a lot of fun, actually. And then I will be ranking the albums of the fairly obscure but very cool early 70s UK progressive rock act Gravy Train. So that's coming up on Sunday. And then Martin and I are getting back together Monday and Tuesday to do some really early recordings with some friends of ours across the pond and way over on the other side of the earth. So bringing some cool shows for you that will be debuting on Monday and Tuesday. So stay tuned for those. And till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell to get alerted of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. And we'll see you next week here at the Funhouse. For Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Have a good weekend, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.